Amelia Harper, GB News.
Well, look, as Boris Johnson faces Prime Minister's questions today, let's chat to political reporter Bill Bowkett. He works for Reaction. Bill, we thought, maybe even Boris Johnson thought he was out of the woods on all of this. Is he?
I would say that Partygate has always been lingering, within Downing Street, and Boris Johnson's fear that this could topple his premiership. And now we're seeing that these first fines have come from the London Metropolitan Police, 20 fines, and that they imply that more may be coming depending on the evidence. But whether this particular episode, or the second part of the Partygate scandal, is going to threaten his leadership, I'm not quite sure. I think many Tory MPs are thinking that now is not the right moment for it to spark a leadership challenge, given the crisis in Ukraine, the cost of living crisis, the energy strategy which the government are having to unveil and is being delayed. So while I think we need to wait until the full investigation is concluded, and also Sue Gray still has to publish her a report in full from her internal inquiry, Boris Johnson, while he may get a grilling today at Prime Minister's questions and also the liaison committee, he's saved for another day, I think.
Interesting seeing the headlines this morning. For example, just the eye in front of me here, PM in denial over number 10 party fines. I mean, he's refusing to say that criminality happened, even though now the Met Police have issued these fines. What are the implications for a Prime Minister who has stood in the Commons and has openly said to everybody there, in front of the world's cameras, no rules were broken? The guidance was followed, and yet the police have found otherwise, and he still doesn't accept that. What are the implications?
So, as parliamentary convention entails, if Boris Johnson did knowingly mislead the House of Commons by saying that the key claim on December the 9th, that all guidance was followed, and having misled the House, then that's a resignation matter. But he's got a saving grace that if he were to say that actually I said it unknowingly or I was misled by my officials, like Simon Case or Martin Reynolds, that there were parties, but I wasn't aware of them, that they were breaking lockdown rules, then he would have to correct the record in the House of Commons, which in itself is quite embarrassing. But if he, Boris Johnson, were to actually get a fine himself, that makes it all the more tricky for him. And that he would actually have to admit and actually apologise for the matter. Whether he would have to resign based on principle, I don't think he will. While the Tories, continue to linger behind Labour in the polls, and while there are suggestions that even with the crisis in Ukraine and the wartime boost that the Prime Minister has gained from this, they still believe him to be dishonest, untrustworthy, and that actually he's not the right man to lead this country at this moment in time.
Do you think it's fair to say the mood's moved on, essentially, in Westminster? Whether or not with the public remains to be seen, but there were so many calls for him to go. Since the war's broken out, I've heard that letters have been withdrawn from the what's it called? The 1922 committee, yeah.
Yes, one of the key advocates for Boris resigning was Douglas Ross, the Scottish Conservative leader, now retracting it, thinking that actually now is a time for unity. And actually, Sir Roger Gale as well, the backbench Tory MP, was one of the key advocates for Johnson to be voted out by the Tory MPs, now saying actually, if Boris Johnson were to be removed at this moment of time, and enough letters were to be sent to Sir Graham Brady, chair of the 1922 committee, that would, quote, play into Putin's hands because it would destabilise government. And like I've mentioned, there are, I think, more important issues, especially with the May elections coming, that what motivates it's actually going to be living standards and how...
Bill, all well and good, and I do think a lot of people will be watching you and saying, here, lad's absolutely right. Except yesterday I saw this march, which was to remember people who had died during the pandemic, and the most emotional interviews of people who had experienced loss. And then you suddenly come back and you say, if this had have happened to me and my family. There was a woman saying basically she wishes she had have broken down the door to go and see her husband before he had died in the hospital, but instead she followed guidelines which Boris Johnson had issued.
That's the most damning thing about this entire scandal, is that Boris Johnson was the person that put forward these restrictions, and we had to make many sacrifices and the pain and suffering that COVID-19 and lockdown caused. And there doesn't seem to be kind of any remorse from Downing Street. Yes, maybe they're not commenting at this moment of time because there is still a criminal investigation ongoing and they don't want to impede that process. But I'm not seeing so much lack of empathy. And it'll be interesting to see maybe what the response from Boris Johnson is going to be today, and also from ministers and the line that they'll be taking.
Well, it'll be a busy day. Bill, thanks for your take on things. Really appreciate that.